because I've never seen a greater attempt at self-inflicted pain than in our next story, because Neil Tyson has been on a tear lately, not only going on Bill Maher, but now on Piers Morgan's show, and showing us how little he actually respects biology. Now, when Neil was in his lane of cosmology and the stars and being a guru of the cosmos, I guess people kind of like that because it's what made him popular. But every single time he gets to talking about men and women's sports and the issue of transgenderism, he finds a way to say something absolutely ridiculous. So let's hear what he has to say in a recent interview with Piers Morgan.
But I can tell you that in the end, nature is the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner of what is objectively true in this world. And so you cannot rise to power, declare something that is true that has no scientific support. You can get away with it for a little while because you can drum up support, especially on social media, but that you're building a house of cards that will ultimately collapse. Or if you manage to shore up the house of cards with more things that are not objectively true, other countries will rise up and they will lead the world in ways that we once did. And I've come to realize that we are highly reactive rather than proactive as a country relative to our place in the rest of the world. And I fear that we may have to sink a little lower in our sort of scientific prowess before everyone wakes up and realizes we're not on the right track, yet other countries are.
All right, so that's a great clip to start with. So the natural law is essentially what he's saying here, that there are laws in nature. There are things that we can see. There are objective facts that we can tell in nature. And then we can develop principles based upon those things we see inherent in creation. This is something that stretches all the way back to Aristotle and the ideas of natural law that we see in Thomas Aquinas. So I'm absolutely here for it. This is great. To be able to say that we can see objective facts in nature, then therefore that's how we should make some determinations. There's actually a biblical principle here, or at least a theological idea. And there's two kinds of revelation. There's general revelation and special revelation. So general revelation is that God can be seen in nature. This is what it says in Romans 1, that the invisible things of God can be seen in visible creation, right? And then special revelation would be things like Christophanies and Epiphanies, or revelation that God gives you directly, where God speaks to you directly. This would be kind of new birth experience, salvation in Christ, those kind of things. But general revelation is available to everybody, even those who are not Christians, because you can reason your way toward the natural law. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is not going to totally agree with all of that, but he's going to agree with the first part. But I just take it one step further because I realize that nature didn't just appear from nothing, because that would be an inane idea. But there is a God of nature that created this nature and the logic by which we can view all of these things and reason through all of these things. And perhaps reason and logic are one of the greatest arguments for the existence of God. So, fair enough, Neil. I'm with you every step along the way. Let's look at nature. Let's look at science, real objective science, rather than just pure, scientism, and let's see what nature has to tell us. But is that what Neil is going to say when it comes to transgenderism and men competing in women's sports? Well, I think you know the answer, but let's see.
I put it to you that you're a scientist. It is clearly an indisputable scientific fact that biological males have a superior power and stamina and lung power and all these other things to biological females, because if they didn't, we would never separate the sexes in sport. The Olympics would be gender neutral, and they're not for a reason. Women wouldn't win anything. So when I hear you try and justify it or say that there's a scientific, and maybe there's not, maybe I'm misquoting you here, but there's some kind of scientific reason why it's fine, I'm like, hang on, Neil, you're Mr. Reality Check. You're Mr. Cold Hard Fact. Surely you can see that this is wrong, without it actually having to be transphobic to say that.
Well, so you have me here live on your show. We don't have to comment on other shows. So let's just have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I did my own study of the relative speed of men relative to women in Olympic sports, the world records, from the 100 meters to the 200 meters, the 400, right on up to the marathon. And what I noticed is in every event on average, men were 10% faster than women. 10% faster. And in events that require strength, that percent was even higher. I forgot what my exact number, it might have been 50% stronger, okay? So across the board, that is the case. So that's not, there's no dispute there. That's
right.
Just objective truth. So now we have to ask, why do we watch sports at all? Okay? And at Friday Night Lights, that's in the United States, that's high school football. Saturday, it's college football. Sunday, it's the NFL. Do you realize, of course, that the worst team ever in the NFL could wipe its ass with the best team ever in college? Why? Because every single player in the NFL was the best person in their college. And so there's no contest between these zones of athletic engagement. But we still like watching college. We don't watch college and say, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles could whip their ass, so let's not watch it. No, we like the equality of the contest and not knowing who would win. That's what makes sports fun. Okay, so if there's a wave of trans women who dominate the sport against other women, all those sports will become less interesting based on how we all watch sports. Even the Super Bowl here in the United States, if it's a blowout by halftime, nobody watches the second half.
Right.
We watch it for the equality of the contest. Okay, so
sounds like you agree
all
with me
I'm saying is, like you said, wait, I'm almost done. So what I see is sports is on the frontier of how to handle this frontier of people who are trans. It's on the frontier of how to resolve that. And I'm making this up now. Imagine the future of sports does not distinguish sex. It distinguishes and sorts people by hormone ratios.
I tried to warn you. Every single time the guy gets into the subject, he says something patently absurd. And here again, we have it, because just looking at people's hormone levels is hardly enough to actually qualify who should be in sports competing together. One of the reasons is that, I don't know if you know this, Neil, or not, but there are people right now who are taking hormone blockers and then taking cross-sex hormones. So actually, this would not be a really natural way of trying to look at who is qualified to compete with each other. Now, we used to, back in the day, actually have a concern as to whether or not people were taking drugs before they competed in sports, things like steroids, and then maybe even different forms of kind of, you know, just mega-loading testosterone. But apparently, Neil isn't worried about that whatsoever. So on the one hand, he's claiming for Nature to talk about this and then telling us that we could just take hormone levels, and then that should be the indicator for all of this. So this isn't science, by the way. This is just an abuse of science. First of all, this is totally oversimplistic. There are multiple factors, not just your present hormone level before you engage in competition, that go into whether or not you are capable of competing with the people that you're competing with. Let's take, for instance, the shape of the male body compared to the shape of the female body, which, whether you know it or not, oddly is created, using terms intentionally here, created with bigger hip span, while men have broader shoulders and all sorts of different things. It's almost like men were created to carry burdens and women were created to carry babies, something like that. I don't know. And then we have the lifelong impact of natural testosterone coming from your body and what that does to you, and clearly changes your body makeup compared to what a woman is. So just a couple of months of cross-sex hormones and hormone blockers is not enough to actually qualify you for a sporting event. But even if we accept his broken idea about testing people based upon their hormones, he's just moving the metric around and then trying to claim that he's avoiding some level of discrimination. But of course, he is still discriminating. And this is the truth at the end of the day, that our modern, very fragile therapeutic age doesn't want to realize, that the truth discriminates. This is why sports is such a great kind of parable for the conversation of transgenderism. Because in sports, it is a great equalizer. We don't get to use our emotions to say how we feel about whether or not a woman should be competing in the NFL with a bunch of dudes that will break her face in half. All that to say, the truth discriminates. The truth marginalizes people. And if that hurts your feelings, I do have some words of consolation for you. Suck it up.
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this.
The reason I can give you those words of consolation is because this is truly hopeful. When God is not on the throne of your life, you take his place, and now you must become the arbiter of all reality, of all definitions. And that crown, it doesn't fit you well.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.